We will now call the meeting of the Waco City Council on February 2nd, 2021 to order at 3:01 p.m. Joining me today are Mayor Pro Tem Hector Sabito, Councilmember Andrea Bearfield, Councilmember Josh Borderood, Councilmember Kelly Palmer, and Councilmember Jim Holmes. City staff also online today are Bradley Ford, City Manager, Jennifer Ritchie, our City Attorney, and Esmeralda Hudson, our City Secretary. Please now join me for a moment of silence. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public attending in person. This meeting is being broadcast live at wcc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the governor and attorney general, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak or submit their written comments on a listed agenda item are asked to register with the City Secretary's office by 1 p.m. today. Individuals who registered to speak on an agenda item must limit their comments to 3 minutes. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. We will now recess the regular session and convene a work session with a report from the City Manager, Bradley Ford.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Welcome to the meeting. I do have one change to the agenda today. Staff actually recommends removing from consideration Resolution 2021-072 concerning the chiller replacement at the Dr. May Jackson Development Center. Staff has received a few questions this afternoon after the posting that require further research, and this item will be brought back to a future meeting. I wanted to start off after that note with an organizational update. In the last budget process, the City Council prioritized the restart of our Office of Neighborhood Engagement. Today, as part of that restart, I'm pleased to introduce Rolando Rodriguez as the new program coordinator for the Office of Neighborhood Engagement. I believe we have Rolando on the line. Hopefully he'll be able to join us in a moment via Zoom. His hiring puts us at full strength in that office, and I'm excited for him and Millette Harrison, our director, to push forward in re-engaging our community. For those that don't know Rolando, he was born in Coahuila, Mexico, and at a young age moved to Waco and actually graduated from Waco ISD and subsequently from Baylor University, and ended up getting a master's degree in communications from the University of North Texas. He's been very active in a number of roles around the community, and I wanted to introduce him to the community. And Mayor and Council, if you don't mind extending a warm welcome to Mr. Rodriguez this afternoon.
Mr. Rodriguez is on the Zoom call.
Hi, thank you. I don't know if you can see or hear me, but I'm excited to be part of the City of Waco, to give back to our community, especially to strengthen our neighborhood associations.
Great. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Rodriguez, and we look forward to seeing your work here for the City of Waco.
Welcome on board. We're glad to have you.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. This is Holmes. Yeah, Rolando. Yeah, welcome to the task. I know, and neighborhood engagement has been a big. I know it's kind of, particularly in this COVID period, has been tough. And I know all of us council people have neighborhood associations that we'd like to attend to get that feedback. And as you get in with Millette and get this thing rolling again, you've got, I think, all of our full support, and excited to have you on board and excited to have this program kind of re-engaged and energized. Thanks, Rolando. Welcome.
Wanda, we're so excited to have you on board. I love knowing that you are a Waco ISD grad and are now serving the community in this way. So we're thrilled to have you on board and look forward to working with you.
You might try to get him back on so if he can turn his camera on so everyone can see what Mr. Rodriguez looks like. Is your camera working, Rolando?
It was earlier. I don't see that it's working now.
Oh, okay. Well,
no worries. We'll get a chance to see you soon. I know all of us, as Councilmember Holmes said, are incredibly engaged with our neighborhoods and so excited that this program is reactivated, and know that Millette is great to have some support in this role because we've been worrying her to death. So welcome, and we look forward to you hitting the ground running.
Welcome, Rolando. This is Josh Boydwood. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. I'll just echo what has been said. This is an important work, and I know we're going to see a lot of fruit from it. So we're glad to have you on the team.
All right. With that, council members, thank you all for those comments. And Rolando, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to invite Larry Halsey to provide the Halsey Report.
The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department has determined that the invasive zebra mussel infestation that was discovered in Lake Waco back in 2014 has been successfully eradicated, preventing property damage, protecting water supply, infrastructure, and avoiding harm to the aquatic system. In September of 2014, City of Waco employees found fast-spreading zebra mussels at a single boat ramp on Lake Waco and feared the impact they could have on the lake. Fishery biologists caution that eradication of the invasive mussels is extremely rare and were made possible only by very early detection and a multi-agent rapid response effort. The Lake Waco eradication is a unique success story for Texas, and Texas Parks and Wildlife staff indicate this is one of the very few invasive mussel eradications in the U.S., and the first successful use of the method developed by the late Tom Connery with Waco Water Utilities, who deserves credit for being the driving force behind the project. The goal was to simply smother as many zebra mussels as possible by placing a huge plastic covering over the mussels in the infested area. After removing the covering, only one mussel was found to survive, deeming the response a huge success. Strategic Communication Work Group, originally created last year by former Mayor Kyle Deaver and co-chaired by Councilmember Sabito, held two virtual public meetings, one on January the 21st in English, hosted by McLennan County Commissioner Patricia Miller, and included Councilmember Andrea Bearfield as a panelist, and another on January the 28th, all in Spanish, hosted by Councilmember Sabito. Information and questions from the community on the COVID-19 vaccine and its distribution was the focus of both of these public meetings, carried live on WCCC.tv. Council District 5 cleanup was held on Saturday, January the 30th, where residents set out bulky items and things that had been accumulating around their property, and Solid Waste Services collected them at curbside. 84.6 tons of bulky items and 36.7 tons of brush were collected and taken to the landfill for proper disposal. Future council cleanups are scheduled for District 2 on February the 13th and District 1 on March the 13th. Postcards are being mailed to residents in advance of the scheduled cleanup day so we can help our citizens keep Waco clean and beautiful. Park crews spent last week helping our partners in the Lake Waco wetlands. A new dog waste station was installed so citizens can keep their park clean while on a walk with their dogs. Similar stations have been installed at Viking Hills Park, Trailblazer Park, the Waco Mammoth National Monument, and Council Acres Park. More are planned for the future. On Friday, January the 22nd, Cameron Park Zoo welcomed a very special new baby giraffe. The baby boy weighed in at 135 pounds and was 6 foot tall. Like all new babies at the zoo, staff are keeping him in a quarantine area and monitoring his progress as the first-time mother, Penelope, bonds with the baby. Like other babies, the zoo will hold a naming contest in the near future. The Waco Fire Department welcomed 5 new members to its ranks on Thursday, January the 21st. 4 of the 5 previously worked for other departments, and 1 is a graduate from the MCC Fire Academy. The new members to the Waco Fire Department include Dustin Fox, William Carey, Zachary Sullivan, George Garcia, and Waters. The City of Waco is proud to have these outstanding new firefighters join the ranks of the Waco Fire Department, who all stand ready to respond to the emergency needs of our city. And on January the 27th, the Waco Fire Department made a special presentation to Bianca Rivera of the Waco Fire Department's Citizens Medal of Merit. Bianca is a 17-year-old that smelled smoke and woke her family, who had all lost their sense of taste and smell due to COVID-19. And she helped wake them and evacuate the house, preventing them from falling victim to the fire that completely destroyed their house on January the 15th. The Baylor Law School is again hosting a People's Law School, this year virtually, on Saturday, February the 13th, that allows Waco citizens a chance to gain legal knowledge on a variety of timely topics. Go to baylorlaw.edu for information on how to participate. And it's tax time, and we want to remind our citizens that for the 17th year, University High School and Baylor University students are partnering to prepare and file income taxes electronically for free, saving the preparation costs and helping our citizens get their refunds quickly and prevent them from using costly refund advance loans.
All right. Thank you, Larry, for preparing the Halsey Report. Council members and public might notice that that's a little different this time around. We pre-recorded the Halsey Report, and that's done purposefully so that we can distribute it to our employees as well as more easily to the public. And so we'll likely continue that format in future meetings.
City Manager Ford, can I say a brief kudos to, especially to cover the part of the Halsey Report that included the public meetings, the virtual public meetings. I just wanted to really thank city staff for all of their work. You know, it was a combined effort between Larry Halsey and his group. A special shout out to Sindra from our city secretary's office that worked tirelessly to make sure that both ran off smoothly. And so Councilmember Bearfield also, you know, just thanking her for her time and dedication to this effort. And it really was just a great platform to really get the information about the COVID-19 vaccine now. So I really want to thank just all of staff for all of their work and support on these two projects.
This is Holmes. So I just wanted to chime in on the District 5 cleanup. As a result of their efforts, District 5 is now completely clean. I'm happy about that. But no, 120 tons. I didn't realize that's a lot of brush and trash. So really, Solid Waste Department does a great job on these throughout the year on the different districts. And it was a very rainy morning when that started, and they stuck with it. And really, 120 tons. I appreciate the work of the Solid Waste Department, and I'm very impressed with the amount that they picked up. I will notice that fan out there. That might have been my fan. I got to go back and check my garage to see if Cindy threw it out. Not sure. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, council members and Mayor Pro Tem. Today on the agenda, we do have 4 informal reports, the first of which is an update on COVID-19 and vaccine implementation. This IR is provided as part of a regular update we're doing now on COVID-19. And as noted, we're in week 8 of vaccinations, and our current allocation from the state to the Waco McLennan County Public Health District remains at 1,500 doses, 1,500 first doses, that is. As Texas Department of State Health Services outlines in their vaccine hub expectations, we are fully committed to distributing those vaccines quickly to all eligible phase 1A and 1B individuals with an intentional focus on equitable distribution. The second IR today, informal report, introduces 3 developments which are seeking resolutions of support under the state's low-income housing tax credit program. The application process for this program is typically very competitive, with few tax credits available per region around the state. And at times, the award of those tax credits really comes down to 1 point in the scoring system. Each applicant highlighted in the informal report is requesting a resolution of support to ensure that they qualify for points in the scoring system based on the governing body, the City Council's support for their development. This IR is simply an introduction to the 3 developments requesting those resolutions, and further discussion will occur at the February 9th Budget and Audit meeting, as well as at the February 16th City Council meeting when the actual resolutions will be considered.
Bradley, can I jump in really quick on going back to the IR on vaccinations? I just do want to comment that I'm so thankful for our health district's staff's work. I think that there were some kinks early on our sign-up process and intake process, and it was just obviously an incredibly difficult process to work out, given the lack of supply of vaccinations and the demand for those. But I think that we've really gotten an amazing system in place. We continue to obviously have those demand. The demand is greater than supply, but the work that we're doing with what we have, I think, is definitely commendable, and I'm so thankful for that. And one note that I did want to make is that we are working strategically to make sure that the state has all the right data, and that we are being strategic in presenting that data in terms of procurement of those vaccinations. So I think that is worth noting, is that the city and the county are hard at work in ensuring that we're addressing that element of this conversation, or this subject matter as well. And then going to the affordable housing, I think you said it, but this council continues to prioritize housing and healthy housing and affordable housing. And I know that I think we're in process of a study even. So I look forward to having those discussions at the budget and audit meeting here in a couple weeks. So thanks for that, Bradley.
Hey, Mayor, I'd like to add on a little bit to that as well. I also am very appreciative of the informal report, number 55. I'm looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have at the budget and audit meeting. But I see Assistant City Manager Galen Price on the call. I just wanted to ask him a quick question about Project 2. In the informal report, there isn't a number of market rate units that they're proposing in their new development. But I remembering it, and maybe I'm completely wrong, so let me preface this by saying I might get my meetings confused and mixed up. But attending the Kendrick Neighborhood Association meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I know Councilmember Bordereau was there as well, I thought that the developer mentioned that there were going to be a certain number of units that they were going to give at market rate. And is that not correct, or just wondering, sorry.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Sabito, that is correct. What they have done is that the way our market rate and our 80% level are pretty coincide with each other. So the market rate units will actually reflect those that are at 80% as well.
Okay.
So there's some correlation between those two. So while the informal report doesn't reflect the market rate units, there actually are market rate units to be included.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I just noticed it with the other two projects. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting confused on the projects myself. So thank you for clarifying that for me, sir. I appreciate it.
This is Holmes. I just want to echo Dylan or Mayor a little bit on the COVID IR. I appreciate staff and the public health district pivoting into a more equitable distribution of these vaccines. And I think it reflects that we're listening and we're reacting and we're improving as we go from step to step, and as these vaccines get to Waco and get in people's arms. I know that we've gone from, again, having the system of kind of a race to the phone deal to more of a wait list. It's a little bit slower, but we think it's a more fair process. And I really want to tip my hat to Deidre Emerson, Deputy City Manager. She's kind of overseen a lot of this from the beginning. And the Vaccine Planning Coalition and the Vaccine Distribution Plan that she's headed up, I think is just shows that we're listening and we're acting, and this is going to get better. And as these vaccines become more available in Waco, and they will, I think we'll have a great system and a very equitable system to get to serve the community. Just want to give everybody an equal shot at getting a shot. I think that's going to be our theme here. Also, and maybe we've talked about this, and it's been in the news, and maybe it's another deal about LaShonda Mowry-Horn going to be the new Director of Public Health Services. I know she's not even here yet, and we're all anxiously awaiting her arrival and her experience and her her input will be welcomed. But anyway, I just want the public to know we are reacting, we are listening, and we are making the system better. And you'll see it as the vaccines come out.
One quick final note along those lines. We are constantly just trying to figure out how to eradicate COVID-19 from our communities. And one of the things that we can do to really help in this effort is to continue to get tested. We're seeing our testing numbers are incredibly low. And so continue to utilize those free testing sites we have popped up throughout the community. That is going to need to be a continued piece of this equation as we move forward. And so thrilled, like Councilmember Holmes said, to have our new public health district director, and final kudos to Deputy City Manager Deidre Emerson for carrying this on her back with such a phenomenal team. We cannot possibly fathom the hundreds of hours and the hundreds of phone calls and Zoom calls that Deidre has been on to facilitate all of this. And equity truly has been at the core. I mean, there are just so many conversations happening along equity lines behind the scenes. So for those of y'all watching, if you feel like you're not seeing those, know that church leaders and businesses and the chambers, neighborhood associations, we're all at the table trying to figure out how we do this in a way that's equitable and making sure everybody has a fair shot at getting a shot.
To echo Councilmember Palmer and Holmes, one of the things, I mean, we bow down and offer incredible gratitude for our staff and our leadership and Deputy City Manager Emerson and all of the people who are working with the health district to make sure that this is a priority and that we're doing this with everyone in mind. But I just wanted to stop for a minute and thank our community. Our ambassadors, the people who are doing what we ask as we pivot and shift and continue to find better ways to do this, and getting people signed up if they can't sign up or they don't have access to the internet, and making those lists of our senior members who may or may not have the ability or knowledge or just patience to log in the process or make the calls, but getting them signed up on those lists, because that's incredibly important. And that's what's going to get us more people on the wait list, so that as we get our distributions of vaccines and as the state realizes how well we do, that we are doing this efficiently and give us more tests, that those people are on the list and ready and waiting. But we couldn't get those names without, as you mentioned, Councilmember Palmer, those churches, those nonprofits, those community efforts, those community ambassadors, that have committed to working with us. So we're appreciative of them as well. And glad we have a health district director, because wow, all of this happened with no one directly at the helm, but folks like Deidre, folks like the other folks at the health district doing 8 million jobs at one time. So we're glad that she's here and coming, and feel free to, if you're listening, come early if you like. But we're excited to get that part done, but continue to work with our community, because we are responsible for taking care of our people.
Great, council members. Appreciate all those comments, and we do look forward to introducing LaShonda to the community in the coming weeks. I believe her start date is around the 1st of March, and so we'll have her join a future council meeting and get an appropriate welcome. And we are all very excited to have her joining us. The two other informal reports on the agenda today. We have an update on the progress of our Quiet Zone project between Peach Street and 13th Street. This project, of course, seeks to greatly reduce the warning horns used by trains in East Waco as well as downtown Waco. And that project has been delayed by travel restrictions during 2020, as well as due to changes in Union Pacific Railroad's personnel and consultants. But recently, all parties, including the Federal Railroad Administration, conducted a comprehensive field review of each of the 13 crossings. And we should receive a final diagnostic review report in the coming days. And the next steps in that project, next steps involving the staff and council, are that we'll receive design plans and cost estimates in April. And we'll provide those to the council, with construction starting as early as January of 2022. And our final informal report is an update on critical water utilities projects. It's a follow-up to an earlier IR this year that highlighted water system capacity reductions due to our Riverside Pump Station project and the Landon Branch Bridge project. We wanted to update the community and council that we've recently gone back up to 49 million gallons per day of treated water capacity from the two sources, which means the most significant risk to water supply and distribution has passed. The informal report also describes ongoing capital improvement work and future ratifications of expenditures related to the water system.
This is Holmes. Yeah, great job on these big water utility projects on Riverside and Landon Branch and the W. Mars projects. The Landon Branch Bridge water line, which we've been talking about for a long time, it's kind of put it on the back burner. And finally we got it because it was deteriorating badly and kind of affecting the bridge there. And it was time to do it. I know it's creating a little bit of inconvenience on people on Lakeshore Drive, but I think it's targeted to be completed, I think, by the end of next month or in March. So I'm happy that we got that one in and got it completed. And also how city staff deftly handled the potential kind of lowering the water ability and water amounts and made it work for everybody. Great job there. But thanks. Good project on Landon Branch and the other ones as well.
Thank you, Councilmember, for those comments. It's always a pleasure to get through a project like that and not have a lot of public scrutiny or attention due to the water changes that we worked through. So kudos to the utility staff for sure. We do have 3 public hearings on the agenda today. The first is one that we've not necessarily ever seen before. So I wanted to walk through that a little bit in detail. It focuses on an open air vending permit renewal application for Javito Vasquez, who does business as Las Trancas Taqueria at 400 North 25th Street. The public hearing is actually required based on section 13406 of our Code of Ordinances that deal with open air vending like this food truck operation. The applicant does meet all requirements for the renewal, except for one, which is the requirement to have written support from residential neighbors within 200 feet of her business. As of this afternoon, we do have one residential neighbor who's not submitted support for the project, and I believe has registered actually for the public hearing to speak later on. The council will effectively have 3 options on how to process this case. You could deny the permit application, approve it, the permit application, or approve the permit application with conditions. And if there's any questions at this point, I believe we have a member of our community services team that can answer any questions.
City Manager Ford, I do have a couple of questions, if that's okay, about this public hearing specifically. And I'm grateful that the applicant and the neighbor that's opposing the renewal will be on the call later. But for our staff, is there only one neighbor within 200 feet of this business currently? Is the one that's opposing?
I believe we have Rainey Hudnall here to answer any questions. Rainey, are you there?
Yes, I do apologize. I was rejoining the meeting and I missed the question.
No worries at all. Thank you for joining us. Quick, my question was, is there only one neighbor within 200 feet of the operating business, which is the one that's not in favor of the renewal?
Yes, from my understanding, yes.
And has that neighbor, and I don't know if I can even ask this, and I'm going to ask City Attorney Ritchie to stop me if I shouldn't, but has this neighbor been there for the last couple of years? Because it is my understanding that this restaurant has been in operation, I guess, for close to 10 years. And so I was just curious if this neighbor has been there throughout the years, or is it a new neighbor that maybe has just recently come into the neighborhood?
This is not a new neighbor. He has been there for a couple of years.
Okay, and based, because he is the only one within 200 feet, then really, even though the applicant has met all the other requirements, there is a chance of his application not being renewed because of this one opposition.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding this correctly. Thank you so much for answering the questions. Thank you.
Radisha, along similar lines, I drove by the taqueria earlier today and noticed that because of where it is on the corner of 25th and Waco Drive, the majority of the neighbors are commercial. Is it just the residential neighbors who are seeking input from, or is it a combination of the residential and commercial neighbors?
It's my understanding it's the residential.
Okay. And a follow-up question to that, in driving by it, it looks like there is a good bit of space between where the taco truck is actually parked versus where the first house. Is that correct?
I have not.
It looks like there may be a few lots in between that.
Yes, that could be true. However, I have not been at the location.
Okay. In driving by there today, that's just for the rest of the council, that's what that looked like to me, is it looked like it's in a parking lot and then there is like an empty lot in between it and potentially another business in between it. So it's not like right up next to a resident's house.
Councilmember Palmer, Assistant City Attorney David Shaw has confirmed there's an empty lot in between the two properties.
Perfect, thank you.
Esmeralda, question, I believe the comments that we received prior to our meeting include somewhat of a narrative from that resident about that resident's experience with Las Trancas. Is that correct?
That's correct. And he actually would like me to just read it. He wasn't going to be able to speak himself, but he registered for me to read his comment this afternoon during the public hearing.
Thank you.
This is Holmes. Were those comments in the materials, or I'm trying to find?
I distributed as soon as the end of the cutoff, a little after 1, maybe 1:30.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it yet.
Email with a packet of all of the registered speakers and the any attachments they provided.
Okay.
I can read that.
So we're going to hear we will have some evidence here because of what the exact complaint is, and I guess I'll go back and read that. That's contained in that letter that was distributed.
Council, y'all will have a public hearing, much like a zoning public hearing.
All right. And then we'll have room, I guess I'm trying to think of the three things as Bradley pointed out. If I'm assuming that there's I guess I need to read it. I will read it before then, but if it's trash or whatever, that's the complaint. There is some room to perhaps allow a period of time for there to be some remediation and conditional approval of the permit, perhaps. I guess again, I don't want to be premature, but we'll hear the arguments tonight.
Good. All right. The second and third public hearings on the agenda tonight are actually continued from our January 5th City Council meeting. You might recall public hearing 2021-063 is a special permit to AKA Moe's Girls 4231 for a short-term rental type 2 at 2408 North 49th Street, as well as public hearing 2021-064, a special permit to Waco Property Rental LLC for a self-storage warehouse along West Highway 84. At this point, we've invited Clint Peters, Development Services Director, into the Zoom to provide any recent and updated information on these two cases.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. On the first one, public hearing 63, the applicant was able to canvass the neighborhood and did provide a petition of support from 6 different, or it ends up being a total of 8, which initially there was 2 with the January 5th public hearing, and she was able to get another 6 signatures of property owners within the 200 feet radius and support. However, none of the neighbors that signed the petition in opposition rescinded their opposition. They still are on the petition to oppose, and we actually received 2 additional signatures in opposition, one of those being within the 200 feet radius. And I believe Ms. Moses signed up to speak tonight.
Hey, Clint, quick question for you. So with the support that the applicant has received, does it still trigger the supermajority that we were looking at the January 5th council meeting?
Yes, because the supermajority trigger is 20%. People that signed the petition own 20% of the land within the 200 feet. It triggers a supermajority. And on this case, it's 28.6% of the land owned.
Okay, thank you.
And then on public hearing 64, the applicant was able to, this was the self-storage on Highway 84. The applicant was able to get in touch with the 4 neighbors that were opposed to it. And city staff hosted a Zoom meeting for those 4 applicants and the owner. He actually had 2 different meetings and then virtual meetings, and then also held a meeting out on the site for the neighbors to come. And I believe he was able to talk to all 4 of the neighbors opposing it. Staff was able to give some information about the zoning and the comparisons between what was being proposed with the special permit and what could be developed on the property as uses by right. And then also our development engineer was able to give some feedback on drainage concerns they had. It did appear that the majority of those property owners were satisfied and actually preferred what was being developed with a special permit than what potentially could be developed under permitted uses. But we did not get any written comments rescinding their opposition. So the supermajority requirement still does apply on this one as well. And the applicant, Mr. McInich, is signed up to speak tonight as well.
Clint, with some of the neighbors changing their stance, but us not having any sort of new received comments, how can we trust that that's true? Was city staff at those meetings, or what sort of documentation do we have of that?
Yes, it was. I attended one of the meetings where one of the owners' property, the neighbors did say that they would rather see this developed in some of the potential uses in C2. She mentioned convenience stores, hotels, restaurants. And then we actually did get an email that stated from one of the other neighbors that stated that they, again, would rather see this developed in some other uses, but they did not rescind their opposition.
Okay, thank you.
All right. On the resolutions, we have 19 on the agenda today, and I'm just going to highlight one because we had so many informal reports and public hearings. And that's Resolution 2021-075, which involves 2 deferred forgivable loans funded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. And those HUD resources are being used for the renovation of 2 structures, one at 917 North 33rd Street in the amount of $64,319, and one at 3513 Lasker Lane for $65,978. Each home will receive significant remodeling and improvements related and including lead abatement, foundation repair, as well as other rehabilitation. These renovations represent years really of work of the City of Waco and City Council in advocating for housing rehabilitation funding and really leveraging federal resources for positive outcomes in our community.
City Manager Ford, if I may, I just want to thank you for highlighting this resolution. It just goes to show you the great things that are going on in our community. And for council, quality of life and safety is a top priority for our citizens. And it doesn't always include police officers on the street. It could include even in your own home and being safe with the air that you breathe within your own home. And to see this type of work that's being done in our community, I'm so grateful for the city staff and the council members before us that worked so diligently and hard to get HUD funding. So these projects can be available. And so just a reminder for, anyone that might be watching this on Channel 10 or via Facebook or online, you know, there's opportunity out here to improve your home, even foundation repair, as you can see. And so please take advantage of the opportunities that the city is offering. And so I'm very grateful that we live in a community where this is happening. So thank you for highlighting this.
Just right quick, I just wanted to highlight numbers, resolution 2021-069, the City of Waco Air Service Development Incentive Policy. I appreciate what our staff, Joel Martinez and the staff out there is doing, forward thinking on getting better air service for our city, more diversified service, and just creating more options for folks. And I think with an incentive policy, it could lead to good things and more options for our Waco travelers coming in and doing business here in our city.
I also want to echo Mayor Pro Tem. Resolution 075 is such a big win. Went down a rabbit trail of lead abatement, and lead-based paint wasn't prohibited until 1978, and so many of the homes in the core of the city were built in the early 1900s. And so I think we could do 2,000 projects like this. I mean, this kind of money and this kind of intense rehabilitation of a home is going to be an absolute game changer for these families that live in their homes and for generations that will hopefully inherit these homes later on. But we need more federal funds like this because this is just such a big need. And like Mayor Pro Tem said, just the impact that living in substandard housing with lead-based paint can have on children's development and on all sorts of health indicators is so significant. So this just feels like a really sweet win and something I'd love to see several zeros behind in future years.
Good. We do have three ordinances on the agenda today. The first two are related to the issuance of $81 million in combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, COs, as well as the issuance of $25 million in general obligation refunding bonds. Those two ordinances are first and final readings and will be discussed here in a few minutes in work session 2021-058. The remaining ordinance 2021-086, is a second reading related to the updating of our building codes here in Waco. And if there's no further questions, that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council would like to remove? Esmeralda, we have a speaker card for 65 and 72 has been removed. Is that right?
That's correct. So 72 has been removed so that there won't be a speaker for that item.
Great. And then 65, we'll remove that. Any others? All right, great. So the consent agenda will include resolutions 221-65 through 221-83 with the exception of resolutions 2021-65 and 2021-72. I will now ask Bradley Ford to introduce the first work session.
All right, work session 2021-058 is a discussion of proposed property development program, including revisions to the residential tax abatement program and the policy for the sale of tax foreclosed property. Today, Interim Assistant City Manager Galen Price will be leading this discussion, and our goal for today, for this time, is to brief on potential changes to the council and really highlight our plan to move forward in a more intentional approach in order to seek and achieve positive results to support quality housing development and rehabilitation in the core of Waco. And so I'm excited to welcome Galen to the table here and to hear his update.
Thank you, Bradley. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As Bradley mentioned, I will be providing a background on our current policy and discussing proposed property program updates, along with a proposed update to the residential tax abatement policy. Of course, after that, I'll be discussing the next steps and answering any questions that you may have. Before we get started, I want to show you a graph that shows the lots sold over the past 5 years in comparison to the amount of lots that we received in our inventory. You can see from the amounts of the lots sold, they're disproportionately greater than what we've received into the inventory over the last 5 years. We've only received 116 lots into the inventory since 2016, whereas we have sold 441 lots in this same time frame. Particularly in the last 2 years, we have only sold 4 lots and received only 5 lots into the inventory. The last policy update occurred in January of 2018. In conjunction with the update, the city entered into an interlocal agreement with the county and Waco ISD to administer the tax foreclosed property sales. As mentioned earlier, there has been a substantial decrease in the amount of properties available. Currently, we have 264 lots available, of which 137 of those lots are considered buildable lots. The remaining lots will be retained as they are needed for infrastructure purposes here in the city. Those lots that are for sale would be sold as is, meaning that the purchaser, if they're interested in obtaining a survey, a title commitment, and or title insurance, it would be at the cost of the purchaser and the purchaser's responsibility. Now, it is up to the purchaser to ensure that all codes and ordinances are followed regarding the development of the lot. Okay. Here is a map of the parcels and trust in each Waco. I will be showing a map of each area of the city that contains the properties currently in the inventory. This information is also available to the public and can be found at wacocitySaleProperties.com. These are the parcels in inventory in North Waco. And this map shows the parcels in trust in Central and South Waco. With the limited number of properties remaining in the inventory, the city is looking to be more strategic in the development of the remaining properties to ensure we have quality development as we move forward. In order to help achieve this, staff is proposing some policy updates with that goal in mind. These include a development agreement that includes building standards and timelines to accompany the sale of the remaining properties. Staff is recommending potential incentives to be available, which I will cover in the following slides. These incentives will not be made available if the requirements of the development agreement are not met. The requirements include a written plan and timeline within 180 days of purchase and completion of construction within 2 years after the purchase. Staff is currently reviewing potential enforcement mechanisms in relation to these requirements. As we discuss potential incentives, we are looking to make modifications to our residential tax abatement program. Currently, the program offers tax abatements on residential properties who occupy the property as their primary residence. We will be presenting and discussing the recommended changes to the residential tax abatement policy. Of note and importance is that the RTA area is not being changed, and it mirrors the impact fee waiver areas for residential infill development. The proposed updates of the policy include the inclusion of duplexes and townhomes in designated areas as part of the policy. Our previous policy only applied to single-family newly constructed homes, but we're proposing to include duplexes and townhomes in designated areas as well. Under our current policy, we're improvements or expansion or modernization of the single-family residences will remain the same, but staff is proposing to add improvements on duplexes and townhomes with an MCAD rehab value of up to $50,000 or greater. Under our maximum property value, staff is recommending that we establish a value of $350,000. The value was derived based on the 200% annual salary of a family size of 4, which is a little over $131,000. That would be about a $395,000 mortgage that would be considered affordable for the family. This is a little high, so we would like to cap it at the $350,000 amount. Regarding the abatement timeframes, we are recommending the abatement timeframe remain the same for homestead property, which is 100% abatement of city taxes on the improved tax value over 7 years. But we are introducing an abatement incentive on non-homestead property. This is being done in an effort to increase the number of affordable housing and or workforce rental housing units available in the city. The abatement proposed would be at 50% of city taxes for a period of 5 years. The recommendation from staff is to enhance the fee waiver policies to include a reimbursement of development services fund fees up to $3,000, a waiver of building fees up to $2,500, and a waiver of water utility fund fees up to $5,000. Fees that have either been waived or reimbursed would be subject to recapture under this policy if the waiver requirements are not met. Now on this slide, we'll define what income levels need to be met in order to qualify for incentives regarding the rental housing units. For example, a family of 4 could earn no more than $39,420 at the 60% level to be considered as an affordable rental unit. This would mean their rent could not exceed $986 monthly. By comparison, a workforce rental unit family could earn up to no more than $65,688. This would mean their rent could not exceed $1,642 monthly. Now, if council is okay with the process, the next steps in the process is a presentation at the city-county meeting, followed by a revision of the interlocal agreement for approval by all governing bodies. We would then amend the residential tax abatement policy and proceed with the development of a web page for the program. Once the program web page has been developed, we would fully launch into the program. After the program has been launched, we will look at an initial program evaluation after about 3 months to see how the program is functioning. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, Galen, this is Hector. Thank you so much for the presentation. Quick question, could you go back to the slide that has the proposed policy changes the staff is recommending, please? A couple slides more, right here. So just that I'm understanding this correctly. So if approved, then a developer would have to submit a written plan for each development within 180 days or six months of the purchase date, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And then whatever the plans are, the construction must be completed within 2 years of the purchase.
Yes, sir.
So if a developer submits plans, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, if a developer submits plans, but then And they meet the 180-day timeline, but 1 year within the project, they want to change the plans. How does that process look? Or are they allowed to change it? Or do they have to go through the whole process again?
At that point,
and do they get more time with that, I should say?
If when they approach us again, as far as a potential change of the plans, we would have to just reevaluate where they are, what they're proposing. And that could be considered additional. We could consider additional time. Now, I would not say they would be given an additional 2 years,
Sure.
but it would be based on what they're proposing to do, based on the circumstances surrounding that change in the scope or development plans. We'd have to evaluate that, and then look at establishing a revision to that timeline. But I would not foresee it being an additional 2 years.
Okay. So we don't foresee an empty lot being developed and taking 5 years or something like that?
No, sir. And that's where we're looking at potential mechanisms that if it's not developed within the 2 years after purchase, there's the ability for that to revert back to the city based on reverter clauses. And we do have mechanisms in place that we've used in previous programs that allow for that. The reverter clause for the property to revert back to the city.
Okay. And then the other part of the proposed changes is that if the developer sells it within the first 2 years, he or she have to offer it to the city first at the purchase price that we sold it to them at, correct?
Yes, sir.
Regardless of any development that has taken place on the lot.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then one more question for my clarification. I don't know if I understood how you came up with the $350,000 value. Can you explain that to me again, please? And what medium income are you using for a family?
Yes, sir. We, and looking at that, we looked at 200% of the 200% level of the area median income. So for a family size of 4, that would be $131,375. And so 30% of that would allow them to qualify for a mortgage of approximately $395,000.
Okay, I see.
Which would be 3 times of their income, which staff felt that was a little higher than what we would like to see from a program perspective. So we're proposing to cap it at $350,000, which if we're looking at the cost of construction and the cost of homes these days is a reasonable amount for an average, for a family size of 4. They may be looking at, depending on their income levels and their earning capacity, that's not something that's overbearing.
And that would include a home, I would estimate around a 3-bedroom, 2-bath type home, correct?
Or even, actually, they could be
a duplex,
potentially a 4 to 5-bedroom home, if depending on the family size.
But this does not include the allowance of multifamily development. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This is only for single family duplexes or townhomes, but things that are 4 units or less is what's considered single family. So that would be the category that this would cover.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Those are all the questions that I had. Thank you so much.
Okay, Galen, this is Kelly. I have a few follow-up questions for you. I know we've been having a larger city conversation about building standards for design. Is any of the design specs a part of this development agreement, or is that a completely separate conversation?
No, there are design specifications that would be included as part of the development agreement. And the ones that are currently being proposed are design standards that we use for our Chodo partners. They're very familiar with these design standards. So these are the design standards that they're actually required to use as they're building houses that they receive funding from the city for.
Okay.
Ellen, would you mind walking through what a couple of those, because there's the base City of Waco building standards, then there's the Chodo standards you refer to. Can you walk us through a couple of the additions that are in that Chodo standard for the council and community's benefit?
Yes. So for the under the Chodo standards, which are the standards being proposed here, one of the major requirements would be the inclusion of at least a one-car garage as part of the building standards. We're looking at those standards also include a minimum square footage of at least 1,200 square foot livable space. So those are really two of the key components of those standards that actually helps improve the quality of housing stock here in the city.
Thanks, Galen. Okay, two follow-up questions to that. Are the Chodos at the table in deciding what those standards are going to be, so they have some sort of a say of whether or not this is feasible for both them and for their clients?
Yes, we've had discussions with them previously before we even established the Chodo standards. We actually met with them about 2 years ago as we were developing those standards, and we sit down and met with each group, and each group had input on the final say of those standards. There were some things that from a staff perspective and from a council's perspective at the time that were non-negotiable, if you will.
Okay, my final question with this is, do any of these things come into play if, let's say, I privately own a lot of land and then some developer comes and is wanting to have access to any of these incentives? Do any of these processes kick into play, or is that only when a developer purchases land that's a city-owned lot?
No, they have the ability to have access to these fees outside of these incentives outside of the proposed property development program. I mean, the residential tax abatement is the program is, it would be a component of this from the standpoint of these are incentives available if you're purchasing the property. However, those incentives still will remain outside of this program if you are not purchasing a property from the city.
Awesome. Thanks, Galen.
I had a couple of quick questions. First, I really like for city-owned lots that we're selling having a development agreement. It ensures that we get lots developed and that they don't just sit vacant, and that we get them developed in it with a quality long-term asset on those developments or on those properties. So I appreciate this a lot. So question. So right now this incentive is available. So there's kind of almost two conversations. It's if we're selling a city-owned lot, then we're going to have this development that's on the screen now. We're going to have this development agreement and a timeline and things like that. And then separately from that, I know that there's overlap and they connect, but separately from that, we have this incentive package that's available for really anybody in that shaded in area. Is that right, Galen?
Yes, sir.
And so is there a way that we could, right now though, there could be, there isn't a design standard requirement if it's not a city-owned lot, to kind of follow up on Councilmember Palmer's question, if it's not a city-owned lot and we're just talking about just the incentives, we don't have any design standard requirements for that right now, do we?
We do not right now, but there is there is a development of some subdivision ordinances that will address design standards, which we're looking at. I believe it's early spring that those would be brought forth and ready for view or review to kind of help establish some design standards as far as building overall within the city.
And I was just going to say too, I wonder if as a part of that conversation, we could add to it, if there's going to be a new construction on a lot and that they want to take advantage of one of those incentive offerings, tax abatement or otherwise, we might consider even having higher design standards than what we might otherwise be able to. I know that if we're, we might be limited in what kind of design standards we might be able to do just on any lot or in the city. But we might be able to have a little higher design standard if it's a lot that we own and we're selling. And then the other side of it is if they're going to tap into an incentive, maybe we have a little higher requirement for what that is, not to make it unaffordable or some sort of insurmountable development standard, but really just ensure that it's good quality development if they're going to take advantage of the incentive program. I don't know how that would play out. I haven't thought through, how that works its way out, but it might be something worth thinking about as we're trying to really think through how do we ensure that good built to last development is coming into the core of our city.
Yes, sir.
Could you go to that? I'd go a couple slides forward about where we get to the 60% part. This one. I hate to have you re-explain this, and maybe I need to follow up after this, but so if there's a rental unit, and so say there's someone builds a house or a duplex and they're going to rent out that house or 2 units on that duplex, then they can charge. So basically they'll be able to take advantage of this tax abatement policy altogether, but only if the rent doesn't exceed, what is it, 60%?
60%, yes. They would have the option of the 60% of area median income for an affordable rental unit, or for a workforce unit, that person couldn't exceed 100% of the area median income.
Okay.
So essentially you could have one affordable rental unit in a duplex and one workforce rental unit in a duplex.
And you get a different benefit depending on how you designate those. Is that how that works?
No, you would have the same benefit. It's just ensuring that we have units available that are for affordable individuals who are lower income, and then those that are between that 80 and 100%, which don't qualify for some of our federally assisted funding per se, but they're kind of caught in the middle, that don't have enough income they still need assistance to help with purchasing or renting something on their own.
Gotcha. So say a landlord is building a property and the landlord wants to take advantage of this incentive, and in order to do so, they have to abide by these rules. How do they designate between a workforce or affordable unit? Is it just kind of up to them to decide what they want to do and know that there's a benefit available for them depending on what they so choose?
Yes, it would be up to them we're leaving that to them to designate how they wish to proceed with that. Now, one of the things from our standpoint, we will be following up from a compliance side to ensure that these units are filled with somebody that is at that 60% level or at that between that 80 and 100% level to make sure that there is compliance with that. So as they're marketing or as they're looking to fill these units, part of it is that we will review it to ensure that they are in compliance with these requirements if they've received these incentives.
That's great. And obviously people can continue to develop rental property as they want to in these neighborhoods that aren't compliant with this. They just won't be able to take advantage of the incentive then.
At this point in time, until we have established the subdivision and zoning ordinances, which are scheduled to be looked at this spring.
And let me just jump in here, Mayor. Obviously, what the city can require of people when they give them incentives is at a very different level from what they can require of them in just normal regulation. So, which is kind of to your point about what we could put in these agreements.
That's great. Yep. Thank you. I think that's all my questions. This is very helpful, Galen. One last thing. It might be helpful for me, who is visual, to get a graph or some sort of table or chart that kind of explains this, because it, I think that, and you went through examples too, but I think it would be helpful for me to kind of see the different kind of offerings or buckets of different types of unit types that we're talking about here. So maybe some sort of graph or table or something like that would be helpful.
Yes, sir. We can definitely get that prepared for you and the rest of the council as well.
Thanks.
Galen, thank you for this information. I am especially pleased to see some standards set where there weren't any. If you go to the slide that speaks about the maximum values, property values.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's important that we set some parameters simply because while I know and understand we are trying to, better our infill and create opportunities to build in areas that maybe hadn't been built or just vacant lots, and we're trying to make more opportunities for homes to be built. I think that there needs to be a cap on what is incentivized. And so I appreciate staff going through and looking at this in reflection of median incomes and things so as not to make it unattainable and to encourage houses that support families the size that they need to be. But, as this is an incentive thing and not just a fair market value thing, I think it was important that we identify what that number was. So I appreciate you all going through and setting a standard for that.
This is Holmes. Galen, thanks for the presentation. I know that I like the idea of building these incentives and kind of shaping this up periodically for property development. And it's a delicate balance, as you know, going through the deal of affordability versus building standards versus economies of scale for builders, neighborhood design compatibility, as Councilmember Palmer pointed out. Available leverage and where this is on infill, available to core infrastructure. A lot of moving parts here. So, and the resolution of one of them sometimes is the sacrifice of another one of those elements. So it's a kind of a moving target. So I appreciate you thinking about this holistically and having open communication with builders and what works, what doesn't work. And ultimately encouraging, home buyers to build equity in their home, build equity on their balance sheet, and build equity in Waco. So I appreciate the work you're doing here. I do agree with the mayor. If I could, some of this stuff I think I understand, but on little bits of it, if I could see it in a table, that would help me too. But overall, thanks a lot, Galen.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that presentation today, Galen. We appreciate you.
Thank y'all.
All right, Mayor and Council, apologize for calling Galen's presentation out of order. We'll actually move back to our original first work session, which is a discussion of the proposed issuance of and sale of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation and general obligation refunding bonds. Today, we're joined by representatives of Mastersons and Advisors, the city's financial advisor, as well as Bracewell, the city's bond counsel. Kristen Bloomquist, Vice President of Masterson, will be leading the presentation, and she's joined by her associate, Chase Eastland, as well as our bond counsel, Glenn Opal, who's on the line for ordinance questions. Kristen, take it away, please. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Is that better? Great. Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Blomquist. I'm with Masterson Advisors. I have Chase Eastland here with me. And let me share my screen so you can see our transaction discussion presentation. You can go through it. Can y'all see that okay? No? Okay, let's see. Is that better? Okay, wonderful. Well, so this is just a quick snapshot of the three transactions we'll be working on. The first page is simply a glimpse of the bond market. This is a benchmark index, so we can see kind of where rates are trending in the municipal market. Right now, as you can see, it is at record lows over the last 10 years, so it's a great time to go into the market and sell the certificates and refunding bonds. The second page is a summary of the certificates. If you kind of look towards the middle, the size of our certificates for both series is just under 75 million. And these certificates will generate 80 million in projects. And just below that, you can see a breakdown of all the projects. Of course, general government, solid waste, water, totaling the 80 million. And in our notice of intent, we have a limit of 81 million that we published with the public. So we're limited by that 81 million. And the total debt service for the certificates comes to about 95.6 million and a rate of 1.72. So here is a breakdown of the debt service for the certificates and their structure. The next page is a summary of the refunding bonds. So currently, we will be issuing about 22.4 million, and our total debt service savings, our cash flow savings, is about 2.87 million. And present valuing those cash flows into today's dollars is about 2.7 million, or 11% net present value savings. So we typically like to see about 5% savings. So this is kind of a little bit of a home run. The total all-in cost of the bonds is about 1.33%. And just below that, you can see the bonds that we're going to be refunding is about 22.5 million from the series 2012 certificates and refunding bonds. And just to the right, you'll see just a cash flow summary of the refunding. The two right columns shows our annual savings and then our net present value savings in the far right column. This next page is a summary of the parameters. This is basically the thresholds that we need to reach in order to sell the certificates on the day of pricing and the bonds. And the certificates, we cannot issue more than the 81 million that we put in our notice of intent. And we also have a maximum rate that we cannot exceed, which is the maximum rate allowable by law. This gives us the most flexibility when we come to pricing. For the refunding bonds, we have a not to exceed par amount of 25 million. And as you saw on the prior page, we're at about 22.4. So we have some flexibility there should the market move a little bit. We also have a maximum rate, is the same as the certificates, max rate allowable by law with a net present value savings minimum of 5%. The next page is our timeline. So today, of course, we're adopting the ordinance and sale parameters. We're also going to be approving the preliminary official statement, which is your offering document that's distributed to potential investors. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting with the rating agencies to rate your bonds. They'll be looking at your credit, which is stellar. You currently have a AA1, AA+ rating, which is the second highest rating for a municipality. So very speaks volumes for your management. And on March 2nd, we plan to price the bonds and certificates. And then around March 30th, we plan to close. So I hope that wasn't too fast, but of course, please, if you have any questions, happy to answer any. I'm sorry, I think I'm on mute. Okay, can you hear me?
Thanks so much. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, this is Holmes. Did somebody else jump in? All right, Holmes. Thank you, Kristen. That's a great presentation, and it looks like this is great execution. I'm just the pricing. You said 133. Is that the expectation of the pricing, or I'm trying to fit that into? Okay.
Yes. Well, so currently, that's right.
133. So it's phenomenal. So the final, we have the ratings call next Friday, and then the pricing call March 2nd. And do we hedge that before the closing, whatever comes out on March 2nd? I'm trying to remember the process. How do we do that?
Right. So on March 2nd, we are going to be receiving bids from all potential investors, and we will lock in the rate on that.
Okay. All right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, great execution again. And I like the part where we're refining that 25 million. I mean, that to me is just brilliant. We're saving 2.7 million in taxpayer money there. Just that's just a great transaction right there. And can you, I guess maybe you'll hear more on the ratings call, but as we've positioned ourselves as our council has positioned ourselves over the last several years to have this reserve and to have a strong balance sheet, can you just comment at all on how that has helped in the expected execution?
Oh, absolutely. Fund balance, you've heard cash is king, and you all have a very, very strong fund balance policy, and that's one of the big reasons why the rating agencies have rated you guys so high, is because of that fund balance policy. So yes, you have very strong financials. You always beat your budget, and that's been consistent over the last few years, and that's certainly something that the rating agencies look at.
Thank you. Good, all good. Great report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kristen, thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to echo Councilmember Holmes on the execution of this plan. So kudos to you and your team for that. I'm very happy to see that our net present value savings is more than double than what's commonplace or even the requirement. So that's very good news. The only question that I had for you is, on the last slide, you mentioned that Waco its rating is second highest. How do we get, and maybe this is a loaded gun, but how do we get to the highest rating?
Yes, well, there are a few things. They look at many different aspects in their rating criteria. Fund balance, of course, if you have a much higher fund balance, then you can, certainly that would require you to set aside a lot more money instead of putting that, reinvesting that into the community. But also, your economy, a lot of that comes into play, your median family income, and of course, management, which is stellar. That's a big reason why we have such a high rating. There are a bunch of other factors that come into play, but mostly fund balance becomes the biggest kicker in terms of your increase in your rating. which, you know, of course, that just means setting aside more reserve to do that.
Well, and thank you for that. And the reason I asked that is because, as we all know, council and city manager's office have been in constant talk about our fund balance and the percent that should be in our fund balance, and some changes that we made to the policy recently. And so that just makes me feel extra comfortable with the presentation that was brought before council a couple months ago, headed by Assistant City Manager Kane and our finance department, and just to show that our staff is on it, man. And so I do appreciate also the city manager's office for their diligent work on this project and making sure that our city rating is in good standings and that we will continue to move forward with that. So I also ask that as a little selfish ambition, just to really give kudos to our city staff as well. So thank you, Kristen.
Absolutely. And you know, well, you probably don't know, but kind of the benefit in terms of rate between a AAA and maybe a AA one is very minimal right now, because you are, of course, a very high rated entity, but also once you get to that top category, there's really nowhere to go but down. So, you know, the rating agencies are going to kind of look at every possible aspect to, you know, see if there's anything that may change that rating to come back down. But, you know, it really kind of puts some golden handcuffs on you in some ways for not a whole lot of benefit rate-wise.
So I think I'm hearing what you're saying, that we should be good. We should be happy that where we're currently at. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Any other questions for Kristen? All right. We appreciate y'all coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Mayor and Council, our last work session today is work session 2021-060, and it's a discussion of the proposed interlocal agreement between the city, WISD, and McLennan County concerning the property associated with the Fairgrounds project, otherwise known as Extraco, as well as property transfers near Cesar Chavez Middle School and Cotton Palace Park. This work session and related interlocal have literally been under negotiation, I feel like, for years. And I'm excited that our team is able to bring the fully negotiated documents and agreements to the council under terms that I think will benefit our community for years to come. Leading this discussion, of course, we have our esteemed City Attorney, Jennifer Ritchie, as well as Park Development Program Manager, Tom Bach, and I believe Tom's going to start the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I'm Tom Balk, Manager of Park Development. City Attorney Ritchie and myself are here to provide some background and some history that have informed Waco's involvement in a number of interlocal agreements, including the one on today's agenda. Excuse me while I make one quick adjustment here. There we go. Resolution 2021-068 addresses land transfers and compensation among McLennan County, Waco ISD, and the city for the purpose of facilitating the Fairgrounds venue project, while also maximizing the public benefits and strategic benefits to each organization. You'll see in subsequent slides that the City of Waco's role in maximizing the public benefit of this land goes back nearly 100 years and establishes the tone for the public uses today. We'll show how McLennan County's venue project and the associated interlocal agreements represent a continuation of this stewardship and remain true to that legacy of civic use. We'll also illustrate the supporting actions to date and the proposed land transfers. But to begin with the thread of our history in the Fairgrounds area, I think it can be best explained through images going back as far as 1917 and World War I. This was a very significant time in Waco's development due to the influx of military investment. In 1917, incredibly, just 14 years after the Wright brothers invented the airplane, the U.S. military built Rich Field, one of their first air training service fields, and it occupied the entire area of what is now bounded by New Road, Bosque, Lake Air, and Cobbs, the area which is represented here by the yellow box. Following the war, the military installation was no longer needed, And by 1929, when this aerial was taken, it was largely vacant. When compared to the military photo on the left from 1917, you can see the prior development had largely been removed. It was at this point that the city of Waco acquired the underlying 258 acres. Its original municipal use was for the establishment of Waco's first regional airport, which was used for commercial flights as well as civilian flight schools through 1945. As those functions shifted out to China Spring with the opening of our current airport, the city of Waco increasingly began to make the former airfield land available for an array of public uses. Lake Air Little League was established and leased land for its initial development in 1950. This was followed by a land sale to McLennan County for construction of what was then called the Coliseum and is now known as the Extraco Event Center, that dated to 1951. The Waco founder Lions also began leasing land from the city for the development of Lions Park, starting in 1953. Even the land for what later became Waco High School was sold to the district at this time. Following into the 60s and 70s, Richfield High School and Paul Tyson Stadium opened as the home of the Waco Rams in 1961. Recreational sports expanded as well with the addition of the Lake Air Little League softball program and the creation of Pee Wee football fields. Today, we see largely the same uses, with notable additions of the Cobb's Collection Center and Challenger Little League.
And as Tom described, the ownership of this block has changed many times over the years to reflect current need for public uses. The green bubbles reflect city-owned property. The blue bubbles reflect county-owned land. The red bubbles reflect ISD land. I'm going to real briefly go around on this property. On New Road is the land used by Lake Air Little League. If you go clockwise, there's land utilized by the Lions Club and the Harrison Senior Center. Below that is the Extraco Event Center. At the corner of Bosque and Lake Air are some private uses, including the Waco Civic Theater. Paul Tyson Field has already been sold to the county, but it is leased back to the ISD. And then if you go along Cobb's, there is city-owned property, including the fire station and the property of the old Red Cross building that we sold to the county for $300,000 in 2018. Other uses like the Brazos River Authority and the Waco Board of Realtors are along Cobb's. And to the left is the Cobb's Collection Center, the land used by Challenger Little League. Back on New Road is the Army Reserve Building. In the future, Matt, you will not see us highlighting basically the corners of these properties. So where Harrison Senior Center, Lions Den, the Waco Civic Theater, all the properties along Cobb's are not part of this transaction. Tommy, if you'll go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So several years ago, discussions began about the unique ability of Waco to draw sporting events, in particular tournaments to Waco, being in the middle of the state, that we wanted to draw these tournaments to Waco and to have families and parents drive with their youngsters to these tournaments, stay in our hotels, and use this center. Around the same time, the Sports Commission was established, and we began talking about expanding the Extraco Event Center to better serve these events. The problem with that is that the county didn't own enough land to appropriately expand the Extraco Event Center. So the ISD, the city, and the county began discussing these property exchanges to make this happen. Tom, if you'll go to the next slide. So all of us have collective interest. In May 15th, 2017, voters approved a venue tax to build a multi-purpose arena. That venue tax is a tax on hotel rooms and car rentals. On October 3rd, 2017, the city, the county, and the ISD entered into an interlocal that in broad terms laid out the plans for the property exchange, but much had to be done, including design by all parties of their future facilities. And on April 3rd, 2019, construction began on the venue project.
Thank you, Jennifer. Not only is the county's construction progress on the new facility, which they've dubbed a base, exciting to see as it takes shape along Bosque Boulevard, it also helps explain the importance of this final interlocal agreement to conclude the necessary exchanges. As Phase 1 construction of the new Expo Center approaches completion, next steps must support the relocation of the district's use of Paul Tyson Stadium to a new on-campus facility, as well as the relocation of the city's use of its Lake Air Little League complex to occur in tandem with this effort. Following fulfillment of its contribution to these initiatives, the county will have a clear path to proceed with the future expansion of its facilities. This agreement finalizes those arrangements. So as we review the necessary land exchanges, it's important to be familiar with the venue tax utilization boundary, which is highlighted here in yellow, within which the venue funding is eligible to be spent. The yellow boundary contains the county fairgrounds complex in blue here, as well as the high school campus in red, and the Lake Air Little League complex in green, along with Cobb's Collection and the Challenger Little League. The next few slides will illustrate each entity's contribution and the compensation as defined by the proposed agreement. Excuse me. The City of Waco's primary contribution is divestment of the property along New Road to support the long-term viability of the Waco High School campus. And in return, McLennan County will pay the city $3.75 million of the venue tax to partially fund the Challenger and Lake Air Little League redevelopment project. It's worth noting that the transfer process does include a leaseback through the 2022 Little League season, and the district must complete the friendly condemnation process prior to any future development of the land. And to quickly highlight a few key points about the funding, $70,000 for utility relocation is the first payment the city will receive from the county and is anticipated this fiscal year. So upon receipt, the city will in turn issue this payment to the district to incorporate the utility work into their stadium redevelopment project. And so in total, the county will pay the city $3.75 million that includes that 70 over the course of several years at a rate proportionate to excess venue tax revenues. And in the interim, the city has the ability within the within the capital improvement program to move forward with the Challenger and Lake Air Little League redevelopment project. And as far as compensation goes, in addition to all that, the district will also provide offsite property exchanges, in particular exchanges taking place near Cotton Palace Park. So that's located adjacent to their Cesar Chavez Middle School, which is near I-35 within the area bounded by Clay and Dutton from 15th Street to about where Waco Creek cuts through there. This is crucial downtown parkland, and it currently lacks continuity for us, which is hampering its access for the public as well as its recreation value. The district has agreed to redefine the boundary between our properties to maximize the park and campus benefits while keeping our respective land totals roughly the same. So returning now to the fairgrounds area, the district's role in the proposed agreement is illustrated here. Their primary contribution is the release of Paul Tyson Stadium, which it's already been initiated, as Jennifer mentioned, and remains subject to leaseback until their new stadium is complete. In return, McLennan County will pay nearly $2.5 million to partially fund the stadium replacement, along with the previously described contributions from the city. As administrator of the venue tax, the county's primary contribution to the exchange is the funding. So $3.75 million to the city, $2.475 million to the district. And in return, the county will obtain the site of Paul Tyson Stadium, allowing their equestrian facility expansion to move forward. The end result retains all the existing functions of the city, county, and district, while allowing strategic redevelopment to maximize their value into the future. Given this framework, our long-standing relationships, 70 plus years with Lake Air Little League, 30 plus years with Challenger, they'll continue to thrive and can better serve the community with a redeveloped complex on a single site. And we're also excited by the opportunity to leverage a natural partnership with Solid Waste Services at the adjacent Cobb's Collection Center to elevate the mission of both facilities. In conclusion, this final interlocal agreement is consistent with prior council discussion. It enables the parties to move forward with needed public improvements, and it provides the city with partial construction funding for new Challenger and Lake Air Little League facilities, extending the deep legacies of these programs and thereby expanding our capacity to serve Waco's youth. In closing, thank you very much for the opportunity to provide an expanded explanation of the interlocal agreement on your agenda today. And at this time, we're happy to answer any questions.
This is Holmes. Tom and Jennifer, thanks for the presentation. Tom, thanks for the history lesson on that thing. That's always fascinating to me. Those maps. I I didn't realize that Braniff, is that right? You had a little Braniff sign?
Yeah.
There?
Yep.
Braniff landed in Waco? I had no idea.
Yep.
This project is very complex with these property transfers within the context of the venue tax, and it takes a lot of cooperation, shared vision, patience, perseverance of city, county, and Waco Independent School District. And I appreciate everybody's work in that history. And you think about just the guys that are there right now. When this thing started, I guess maybe 10 years ago, before I got on council, this was 2 city managers ago, 2 mayors ago, I think 2 judges ago, and 2 WSD superintendents ago. So it's kind of a testimony to this project staying on track and it getting finally too close to the finish line here. The base project looks great. You know, it looks like it's going to go online this summer, so that's very exciting. The Lake Air Little League fields, which I'm very involved with. My 9-year-old kid has practice there this afternoon, actually. And so I'm looking forward to being able for him to use those new fields over there. The sooner they can get here, the better. That's great. This whole project is transformative for this part of the city and District 5 in that bringing more people to the city. I think again, that base project, the new building there, exciting about bringing, as Jennifer and Tom explained, bringing families to the city for tournaments and volleyball, basketball tournaments there, and the improved baseball fields over for Lake Air Little League. I think is another just a great asset for the city. So I'm excited about the project. Appreciate everybody's perseverance. And you didn't mention the little kind of a monkey wrench thrown in the whole deal of hotel tax, or maybe you did, hotel tax and car rental tax, which is the main economic driver of this whole project. It's taken obviously a hit here in the last year, and we've still been able to basically keep it on track with a view towards the second and third quarter. Hopefully that'll come back and the cash flow aspects of this thing get back on track too. So a lot of moving parts here, a lot of history, and just very happy that this project is getting on track. It looks like we're getting to the finish line on the whole property transfer. So I appreciate everybody's efforts.
Thanks.
I will say, Councilmember Holmes, you mentioned, it's taken multiple city managers and multiple other people, but there has been one common thread at the table for the vast majority of this project, and that's City Attorney Ritchie, and she's really held it together and got us to this day. So special kudos to her patience and thoughtfulness in this.
I'll jump in. I'll echo that. Jennifer, thank you so much to you and your team and all of your hard work on this. And Tom, thank you as well. Also loved the history. It's exciting because it's great to have a local sports tourism industry. It also benefits our own community. My kids aren't old enough to be traveling for sports yet, but I know a ton of families who drive up and down I-35 to go to sporting events. And so to have something here locally that our local community members can be a part of for volleyball tournaments or for whatever it is, that's going to benefit our regional economy because people are going to be driving down to come to those events that'll be held at this facility. But it's also going to keep our folks here in town, which is going to be convenient for them. So this is a great project, and thankful for the partnership and excited for us to move forward on this deal. I think it's going to be good for our city.
Mayor, I hate to come behind you because I want you to have that last word. But I do think that this is a long time coming, and I'm appreciative for all the staff that has worked on this and have dedicated so much time and all the moving parts with all of our intergovernmental partners in this. I think that this is one of our best placed strategic plans and all the land moving and things, because it doesn't just impact the Extra Coast Center, which is huge. And I mean that the ability for our sports teams and my nieces a elite volleyball player and has traveled the world doing all of this. And I would really have liked for some of those dollars to come to Waco, but soon they will and will be able to. But with these chess moves and with these well strategically placed plans, you know, it makes impact on Eastern Little League. It will make, Lake Air Little League. It'll make an impact on our home, on our communities. Southern Little League will, you know, is involved in this shift. And then, you know, I'm sure there will be some development in Eastern Little League. So I think that all of these strategically placed things will impact our visitors, which, you know, we love and we appreciate all their dollars that they're spending, but also our children here at home, because we are doing things to make sure that they have places to go and play and do things and grow and socially develop and become amazing Wacoans and well-rounded young boys and girls to go forward. So I'm appreciative of staff for everything that they do to see that effort. And I look forward to being able to celebrate because Waco is well known for Little League championships. And so I look forward to seeing more in all of our Little Leagues.
Awesome. Thank you for this presentation, Jennifer and Tom. We so appreciate y'all. And Bradley, I guess that turns it back to you. Is there any other work sessions at this time?
No, sir, Mayor. We are done for the day on my end.
Great. Are there any requests for future agenda items? If not, we will now recess the work session and reconvene regular session for executive session as read into the record by the City Secretary at 4:47 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. 1, attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, possible dispute with video service providers regarding franchise fees. 2, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072. 3, economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. And 4, personnel, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074. A, City Manager Bradley Ford. B, City Secretary Esmeralda Hudson. C, City Attorney Jennifer Ritchie. And D, Municipal Court Judge Christopher Taylor. We are now in executive session at 4:47 p.m.
Thank you.